Erev Tov, everyone. Okay, a couple of words before we begin. First of all, thank you for Mrs. Coney for organizing and organizing all the shiurim that we have here, which is, because of me, not that many, not enough. And to all the women that are involved and to all of you that came. Now that you're here, I'll do something I never do, is thank my Rebbitzin, because she did a wonderful thing here. As you may probably know, she started this WhatsApp group and gets, busy with it all the time. It's a tremendous amount of research and a tremendous amount of responsiveness, and I'm personally very grateful, not only because she gets the questions and not me, but it's deeper than that. It's because she knows the answers and I don't, and I really don't. Like when it comes to, we all have our strengths. Rabbi Krakowski's here. We'll talk about that in a minute. He knows a lot, but I don't know that much about products and hashkachas and all of that. And Bela does a lot of research and yesher koach. I will just say this as a word of introduction. That, one of the things that they say about chametz is that chametz is there to remind us to be humble. Like if something is chametz, like a big, Wonder Bread, it's all inflated and it's full puffed up and it's all artificial, a lot of air, and a matzah is, smashed down to its finest and thickest components. And throughout all the generations, we've been taught that this is to remind us to be humble, because not to get too carried away with our ego, and not to, and sometimes to be real. The reality of the Torah is for 7-8 days a year, you could at least be real, and while you're checking for chametz, stop, just get away from that inflated stuff. So I just wanted to say this, that it really works for me. This, because there's no time that I'm more humbled than on Erev Pesach, when, first of all, so much Yiras Shamayim going around with the questions, and people are so careful. And I'm also humbled with what I don't know, that the products, the technology, I try to stay up with it, but it's not such a easy thing to do, and there's, especially if you don't have that much time. So I am, in fact, Makayim this mitzvah of being humbled by Pesach and by matzah and by the lack of chametz. So I come before you tonight with humility. The main event tonight is Rabbi Yissachar Dov Krakowski, who I know for many, many years, who is first and foremost a Talmid Chacham. And that's very important, because a lot of people feel that they're mevinim in Kashrus, and they're not Talmidei Chachamim, and they figure, well, I know a lot about food science and things like that. Very, very important that have a Talmid Chacham, and we're very, very lucky that the director, Rabbi Krakowski, is the director of OU Israel Kashrus, which in my mind makes OU Israel Kashrus a very, very reliable hechsher. The OU America is also very reliable hechsher. Rabbi Krakowski is the Rosh Kolel of Kehillat Torah. He's a Rav of a shul in Shari Chesed, and he knows a lot. And so from my recent conversations, encyclopedic of things. Now, we're limited here in time. As Rabbi Krakowski said to me yesterday, I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, I said, how long do you want to speak? He said, I could speak for 5 minutes. I could speak for 5 hours about kashrus, So we don't have that much time. We really only have a maximum of an hour. So I'm going to stop saying introduction and start talking a little bit. But I think the way we should do this is let me just speak for a few minutes and refresh our course in some of the obvious and clear things about Pesach and chametz. And then Rabbi Krakowski will do the same. And then I have here a list of your questions, which is 24 questions, and if you're not covered, I don't know if we'll get to it, but if if it's not covered, then raise your hand, please, and ask a question. I really recommend, if you can, that you borrow a pen and write it down, because unless you're like super geniuses, there's a lot of information here to remember. I'll give you an example. Here's a list of kitnios: beans, buckwheat, caraway, cardamom, corn, edamame, fennel seeds, fenugreek, flaxseed, green beans, hemp seed, lentils, millet, mustard, peas, poppy seeds, rapeseed, maybe rice, sesame seeds, sorghum seeds, soybeans, sunflower seeds, teff. That's from the OU website. Now, can anybody repeat that back to me? Okay, so the real answer is that I'm happy to distribute this list, or you can look yourself on. I got this from the OU online website. It wasn't my research. But what I'm saying is that there is information here that you're not going to easily find, and I very, very strongly recommend that you take some notes if you're interested in. First of all, one of the ironies of the Torah is that we're not allowed to eat chametz, and we have to eat matzah. Chametz and matzah are made out of the same stuff. In order for something to be a kosher matzah, it has to be made out of one of the 5 grains, the famous 5 grains, which are wheat, spelt, barley, oats, and rye. If you decide you want to make quinoa matzah, it's not matzah, and you're not yotzei mitzvah with it. So too, the only things that can become chametz are things that are made from either wheat, spelt, barley, oats, or rye. If it's not made out of that, it's not chametz that the Torah is talking about chametz. And this is probably the most important thing to know about Pesach. It's obviously silly to say that if something has wheat in it, it's chametz, because matzah has wheat in it. So obviously, you can have something that has the 5 grains in it, and it's not chametz. So this has to do with the fact that these 5 grains were never left alone, even unsupervised in many cases, to be able to be in contact with water, and that would make it turn into that gaivedika flour, right? In other words, once you put water on it, it starts to swell, it starts to expand, and that becomes chametz. That's our arch enemy number 1 here of Pesach. One of these 5 grains that became wet, presumably for 18 minutes or so. So matzah is always 18-minute matzah. Why is it 18-minute matzah? Because you don't want to let it. That's why you have no chance of it ever becoming chametz, because the only way one of these 5 grains can become chametz is if it comes in contact with water for 18 minutes. Besides for this chametz, there are kitnios, which is, I think, first of all, a lot more complicated, and second of all, most of the questions that come up on Pesach with ingredients and products and hechsherim, I don't know, maybe Rabbi Krakowski will confirm this, but most of the things I hear about are kitnios questions. Now, kitnios, which is always translated as legumes, but the problem is I never knew what legumes were. It comes from the word katan. I mean, if you just look in your Webster's dictionary at legumes, you're going to see a lot of different possibilities of what legumes can be. But this is not chametz. Torah doesn't talk about any kind of legumes, but it is halacha. Meaning, people think it's only kitnios. Kitnios is very important for what it is. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch. It's brought earlier in the Rishonim. There's a whole sif in Shulchan Aruch, Tafnun Gimel, I think, about kitnios. I read you the list before, so now you're all expert of what kitnios are. But the idea of the early minhag. I think this goes back to the Rishonim, I think, or the Rosh and Rabbi Yechiel Paris, his Rebbe, and it goes back a long time, to the let's say 13th century, and what the feeling was that people are making big mistakes because people that are not privileged to be so educated either in yeshiva or Beis Yaakov or in food science, what's happening is they're seeing somebody eat rice, let's say, and they're feeling like, okay, so you're allowed to eat challah, the rabbi's eating rice. And this was a problem. So already back in the time of Shulchan Aruch and earlier, it was decided that we shouldn't eat kidneys. Now, there was different opinions about this. And the main two opinions that concern us is the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch and the opinion of the Ramah. Now, maybe you're familiar with the fact that the Sephardim usually go with the Beis Yosef. That's why you hear that. Maybe that's why you hear Beis Yosef a lot regarding Sephardim, or Rabbi Vati Yosef. But the Beis Yosef, the original Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, so he says that we don't have this minhag. We don't have a minhag of not eating kidneys. This is not an issue with us in the Sephardic communities. Comes the Ramah, who was our posek of the Ashkenazi communities, and he said, no, kidneys is a real issue, and he says that you're not allowed to eat kidneys. Hence, you have a divide, and you see this a lot in Eretz Yisrael. You have a divide between Ashkenazim and Sephardim as to whether you could eat kidneys or not. It's very confusing here for us Anglos, because you could see big tzaddikim eating things that you're not allowed to eat because you're an Ashkenazi and they're a Sephardi. You could see big rabbanim, you could see big kosher stamps on it, and it's still not good. And how are you supposed to know? So if you look carefully, you will know, or you can ask Rebbetzin, she knows. But it is definitely confusing, much more so. I think like in the United States, I think like the OU talks Ashkenazi, isn't that correct? I mean, is that correct? OU Kidneyot. So they're okay, because there's a growing Sephardic community. But for the purpose of these few minutes that we have, I'm going to assume we're Ashkenazim. I must share that I was at a chuppah maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was a Ashkenazi girl marrying a Sephardi boy, two wonderful, wonderful people. Were you at the same wedding? And the Rav pronounced that I now pronounce you, now that you're getting married under the chuppah, he told us, Kala, you are now mutter to eat kidneys. that was like his great besura under the chuppah, which is true. Once you marry an Ashkenazi man, you can she was Ashkenazi, sorry. Once you marry a Sephardi man, so you're allowed to eat kidneys, and that's the way it is. There's also on Pesach, and we'll go into the details as the minutes go by, but besides for the prohibition of eating chametz, which we're all very familiar with, there's another prohibition of you're not allowed to own chametz. La yimatzeh lecha chametz. You shouldn't own chametz. This is very unique. I don't know that there's too many other halachas in the whole Torah that talk about owning something. Avodah zarah, maybe like a couple of things. Mostly, you're allowed to own something. You're allowed to even do business with it. But the chumrah of Pesach is that right from the Torah, right from the Chumash Midoraisa, the chumrah of Pesach is that you're not allowed to own chametz. Now, that's mostly why we're all cleaning our homes. That's the only reason that we're, for instance, selling our chametz. The reason why you sell your chametz, and by the way, this is an important thing to do, even if you think, I'm telling you my opinion here, even if you think that we've cleaned everything and we've gotten everything and I don't keep anything around, and I hear this tens of times Erev Pesach, but you should still sell your chametz. It's first of all, you don't know, you forgot about your lift someplace in the Atlantic Ocean, or your warehouse in New York, or your machsan. First of all, you don't know, even possibly, according to some poskim, even if you have stocks in chametz companies. And second of all, it's the minhag Yisrael. Our minhag is that we sell our chametz. I've been doing this since I'm a little child. I went with my father to the Rav and you sold the chametz. This is. It doesn't cost anything. I don't take any money for this, but I'm happy to do it. The forms are around, and everybody should sell their chametz. The purpose of selling your chametz and the purpose of cleaning your house for chametz is mostly not to own chametz. That's the reason. Lo yimatzeh lecha chametz, different than eating. There's a big difference, though. And the difference is this, that when it comes to eating chametz, so chametz, another big chumrah of chametz we don't find in too many places, it's asur b'mashahu. Asur b'mashahu means even a drop. Now, a drop doesn't mean like, there's chametz in the atmosphere or in the air and you're not allowed to breathe. But it does mean that if there's a cookie crumb and you eat it, that's an isur d'oraisa. That's on eating chametz. On owning chametz, so then it goes back to like normal halachas. And normal halachas is that if you're not asur b'mashu, like, you're not allowed to eat it, but you're not over an isur d'oraisa for owning a drop of chametz. You're over an isur d'oraisa for either owning a kazayas of chametz, like let's say a cookie or a piece of bread or bigger, and you're over an isur d'oraisa even for crumbs if there's enough of them around that could possibly accumulate and turn into a kazayas. So, right, kazayas, everyone comfortable? Kazayas. So that's a big difference. There's a big difference, and there's a whole different attitude here. The truth of the matter is, the way we sell chametz here in Israel, so included in the sale is, it says right in the document, it says pirurin shel chametz, that you're selling also whatever crumbs you have, not to own it. I'm not sure why they do it, and I know that like Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach writes that the reason why you should do a mechira is for pirurin, because of the crumbs of chametz. But through those crumbs of chametz, you're not over any avera for. But so he's worried. What he's worried about is that you could, one person's crumb is another person's meal, and you never know, what's called crumbs. Now, the other thing about chametz, I just want to say, and again, just to refresh your course here, is chametz has to be edible in terms of eating it. So if chametz has been totally destroyed or lost its value, its food value completely, poison, let's say. So then there's no avera of eating it. Now, why would you want to eat poison? So the answer is you wouldn't want to eat poison, but maybe it's like a chemical or something like that. And like a lot of the questions that come in have to do with like perfume and shampoo and different cosmetics, and does that have chametz in it or not? And we could talk about that for a minute. But the answer is yes. Some of them do have chametz in it, but just because another rabbi said this to me a couple of days ago, he said, "Yeah, but isn't that all that stuff?" Is not really royal achilas kelev anyway. It's not really something that a dog could eat. So he told me that what he does is he tells everyone just it's all good, it's all fine, no problem. This is not true. This is not true. There's, first of all, it's not true legally. Legally, anything that you use from your neck up cannot be poison. It's against the law. It can't be poison. I don't know if it's been dog tested. Will a dog eat it? Will a dog not eat it? But I can say that sometimes, and I mentioned this last year also, sometimes you read the ingredients on a bottle of shampoo. Like, who does that? Only from Jews. You go to read about ingredients on a bottle of shampoo. But, you read the ingredients of, and if you're a little bit more of a, trying to be, let's say, healthier or a little bit more careful, you read the ingredients on a bottle of shampoo, and it's the same ingredients that's on your salad dressing. It's unbelievable. It's like, wheat, mamish wheat, as wheat and gluten. I just saw it today. All kinds of flavorings and fragrances, all kinds of stuff. Now, would a dog eat it? I don't know. Maybe. Again, I don't have a dog, but I'm not so sure that it's not called chametz. That really needs to have a psak. So I'll give you, just while we're talking about cosmetics, so the big culprit in most of it, unless it has oats or wheat in it, that's obviously something, which doesn't mean anything. You just don't use it on Pesach and sell it. Sell it with your chametz. Even if you have to sell it, just sell it with your chametz. It's easy. But a big culprit in most of these cosmetics is alcohol. And alcohol is sometimes chametz and sometimes not chametz. You'll look at the packaging of all these things, and you'll see it has alcohol in it. But sometimes it's isopropyl alcohol, and sometimes it's ethyl alcohol. So this is the thing to write down and remember, that isopropyl alcohol is not chametz. It comes from petroleum or something. It's not a chametz-based thing. But ethyl alcohol, or sometimes called e-alcohol, there's a lot of different names for it. You got to be a bit of a chemist to know. But ethyl alcohol is chametz, and if you see it on your soap or on your shampoo or on your perfume, so I don't know that you should right away go decide paskin that it's not royal achilas kelev. Depends. Okay, sometimes yes, sometimes not, and you should be careful with it. Another thing I want to say is. So what's denatured alcohol? It could be chametz. It goes this way, that way. It doesn't mean it's not natural. It just means something else. Just one more yesod, and then I'm going to let Rabbi Krakowski speak. And through this evening at some point, I want to talk about how to kasher ovens and how to kasher stoves. This is very important for me to talk about, because that's what a lot of the questions coming in. But maybe during the question and answer period, we'll do that. I just want to talk about another halachic thing, and that is how edible is it to a dog or otherwise if the chametz is in your pot, soaked into your pot? Why are we kashering pots? So why do we have special plates for Pesach here? I just explained that it has to be something that's edible, but it's not edible. So why are we worried about it? So the answer to that question is that there's another principle that we have to know, and that is this is a very Jewish principle, and that is that it's called in halacha tam ki iker. Tam ki iker simply means that we know. Long before the scientists talked about seasoning pots and how to get the flavor out of this kind of metal or that kind of metal, we knew, Chazal knew, that if you cook something, you cook oatmeal, let's say, in a pot, that oatmeal stays in the pot and actually adds flavor to the next food that you're going to cook in that pot. But isn't it minuscule? So the answer is it might be minuscule, but if it gives over a tam, if it gives over some kind of flavor, so then we say tam ki iker. And now there's a whole Shulchan Aruch, a whole section of Shulchan Aruch based, which revolves around this point, 60 times as much, 100 times as much. But Pesach, I just want to say this, Pesach, we're very, very machmer on this. And the reason why we're very machmer on Pesach is because, remember, everything else, you have to have a significant amount before you over an aver, not chametz. Chametz asur b'mashu. So since chametz is asur b'mashu, we're particularly careful, and that's why we have. We also have separate plates for milchiks and fleishiks. But even if you would, I know somebody who has plates for treif and for kosher. I do. So the kids come, But Pesach, you have to be machmer, because Pesach, we don't say the regular rules of lost 1 in 60, and we don't say those rules because chametz is asur b'mashu. It's asur with even a drop. So therefore, we're particularly careful, and it's not just the chomer. That's the din. That's the halacha that we have to stay away from it. There's also chametz, which you wouldn't think is chametz, besides for cosmetics. I was reading today that charcoal that you buy to make a barbecue, So what could possibly be the chametz in it? All right. I doubt is there any charcoal that's kosher l'Pesach? Is this such a thing? This is what I read, a secular, non-Jewish website, that a lot of the coals that are put into charcoal bags were previously used by alcohol companies, like whiskey companies, to filter the alcohol. And it's better for the environment if they recycle those coals and put them in your barbecue to burn. So all of a sudden, like, again, I don't want to make problems where there's no problems. Everyone makes barbecues, chol hamoed. But I'm just saying, like, who knows where there's chametz, and who knows, like, people say, I got rid of all my chametz. Well, maybe you have to sell your charcoal. Like, I don't know. So you have to be very, very careful and knowledgeable. So talking about knowledgeable, I want to ask Rabbi Krakowski, who is very, very knowledgeable in kashrus. I want to give you a compliment. I think I'm one of the biggest experts in kashrus in Israel. We're very honored to have you here and privileged to have you here, and I'd just like you to come speak to us.
Chalila, I don't want to start with correcting the Rav, so I'll accept the compliments only so as not to correct the Rav. And the truth is, it's tremendous covenant, in a certain sense, I guess, very humbling and apropos after what the Rav said. I think the first time I was zeichet to hear the Rav was about 24 years ago. One of my sisters married a constituent from the Rav Shol in Monsey, Shtikov Akarv, I think also. That was the first time I was zeichet to hear the Rav, and I remember the drasha until today. Not necessarily 100%, but a lot of it. So in terms of, what I'm going to focus on is really products and Pesach. And I'll try to take a little further we'll start with that last idea of ta'am ke'ikar, of what's balua, what's absorbed in the kelim, in the utensils. And it's one of the hard stages in terms of making kosher l'Pesach products. I tell people sometimes that probably 70% of kosher l'Pesach products in America are manufactured in Eretz Yisrael. And that element of hachshara, of kashering, is the number one reason for that. The Rav, we don't certify Pepsi, but the Rav who certifies Pepsi, he went into kasher, the Pepsi facility, and the plant manager came in, and he saw him, going from one place to the other place, giving instructions to this worker, that worker, how to kosherize the different parts of the plant. Steam, heat, blow torches, all sorts of different things, hot water, everything was flying there. It was, fireworks, literally. So the plant manager tells me, he says, when you finish this kosherizing process, have you come to my office and we'll drink to it. Okay. But, went on. It was after the work day was over already. He said, okay, but he asked me, I'll check if he's still here. Probably not. And, I'll get off easy. Sure enough, though, he climbed to the corporate level, and he's there. So he goes into the plant manager's office. He pulls out a bottle of scotch. He pours him a l'chaim, a cheers, and he says, to the Passover holiday, he tells him. And then he turns to him. He says, Rabbi, tell me, how many months long is Passover? He says, months? It's a week. The guy chokes on his, scotch. A week? You mean to tell me you guys can't live without Pepsi for a week? Okay. Now, to kosherize a plant means that the plant has to stop working. Right? All of you know, when you kosher your kitchen, you have to not use it for 24 hours. Can't be a ben yomo. That's back to the ideas of the things that are absorbed and how they work, etc. So in order to take advantage of the various halachic mechanics that we have, we'll wait 24 hours in order to kasher. So for a plant to shut down for more than a day, you also have to clean and do the actual kosherizing. So for them to shut down for approximately a day and a half to 2 days means a tremendous loss in production. Now, for the minuscule amount of business, I don't know how much a kosher business represents at the end of the day. There's a perception out there in the world. There's so many Jews in powerful positions and in noticeable positions, so many Nobel Prize winners, etc. And Israel's always in the news. There must be billions of Jews all around the world, and they think kosher is more worthwhile than it might be. And there might be other reasons for it also. That there was a certain point in time that we did some certification work for another type of certification, not a kosher certification, that they piggybacked on us. We have Rabban and Mashkichim going into plants all over the world, and they wanted to certify things for being gluten-free. And it went on for a year or two. It was good. You got extra money from that, from the certification for every audit we did. And after about a year and a few months, they stopped with us. And the reason why was they said that we were nixing all their plants. And they created for us a questionnaire. It was, it was a multiple choice. It wasn't, nobody was writing an in-depth report on, is there gluten in the plant or not, and the various reasons why they think maybe there's gluten somewhere and somehow. But by the time we finished answering the questions, it wasn't, gluten-free to the standards they had set. So it created a problem for them. They said, we can't certify anybody as gluten-free then, and they decided to look the other way and find somebody else to do the audit that would have some sort of magical way to do the audit without finding these problems. So there's something to the fact that kosher supervision is more intense, definitely by the good hashkachos, like the OU. But still, it's not worth it for companies to close down for 2 days or a day and a half in order to kosherize, and therefore many of the products, especially shelf products and final products, consumer products, will be made here in Eretz Yisrael. But it doesn't end there, because the ingredients also need to be kosher certified. And there's very few raw ingredient manufacturers in Israel from the bases. The Rav discussed cosmetics containing alcohol. Another cross-contamination between the certifications is, sometimes we cross paths with halal certifications. So in my various conversations with various, imams and the like, so I asked them, how do you certify products as halal? They don't have a concept of bittul, so they claim. There's no product nowadays that's made without flavoring, and every flavoring has alcohol in it. You can't make a flavoring or a fragrance, for that matter, without having alcohol as a base. That's what absorbs the very concentrated taste or fragrance into a minute amount. So that's going to be like the real base of the product. So you have it in almost everything, every candy and every ice cream and anything that has flavors, which is practically everything we eat that's industrially produced, even if it's a natural flavor. A natural vanilla flavor will usually be, you take the vanilla seed and you let alcohol soak out the taste of the vanilla bean, and then you'll have natural vanilla extract, but it's going to be alcohol. So use natural alcohol, high quality natural alcohol, etc. So they told me if it doesn't say it on the label, so it's fine. So it was great, actually. I found out a few years after I had that initial conversation. I went to Saudi Arabia, and by the invitation of the Crown Prince there. It's a different story. But the chef that was going to be doing the cooking there for the kosher kitchen that was being done for the reason that they needed a kosher kitchen there, he asked me to bring various, I was bringing meat and chicken and things like that. There's no way to find kosher in Saudi Arabia from here. But he asked me also to bring balsamic vinegar. But he said, don't get me wine vinegar. He says, it should be balsamic vinegar. So I said, okay, but why balsamic? He said, because I found balsamic vinegar I can bring into Saudi Arabia. They don't stop me because it doesn't say wine on it. If it says wine on it, then I'm in trouble. So he says that they're going to stop you by the border if you bring in something with it says wine. It needs to say balsamic, only balsamic. Okay. So the the flavorings are extremely complicated aside from alcohol. Any flavoring that, again, the regular industrial flavorings, it's like a notebook, like a full, like a volume of ingredients that goes into each one of those flavorings. In order to pack it in so potent that you have all sorts of ways to capture, every element of your taste buds on your tongue so that it should taste really sweet or really sour or really whatever it is. They'll put in a number of different ingredients that have a sour thing, but each one is slightly different. So when it's combined, it's extremely potent because it will hit you from every direction, so to speak. So it's very, very complicated, and very often these things are blended. In Israel, there's a number of flavoring companies, but they're not making the bases for the most part. They're buying ready-made flavorings, and then they're making further blends of these flavorings. So it's very, very hard to get to all the components in a flavoring and make it kosher Pesach. That's why one of the things you might notice on Pesach is, first of all, the flavorings aren't quite as good. And second of all, there's far fewer flavors, and there's less variety very often of the same thing. So, and that's really part of the reason is it's very complicated to make these flavorings kosher LePesach. Now, what's happened over the years, we're very spoiled in Eretz Yisrael, and we're very spoiled in America. Rabbi Genak, the CEO of OU Kosher, says like in America, it's like we're certifying products as kosher for the Goyim. Says, when he first came to the OU many years ago, companies weren't so interested in being kosher necessarily. But nowadays we get requests from all sorts of companies that they want to be kosher. We don't have to solicit companies to be kosher at all. There's less blatant anti-Semitism in America than in Europe and other places, and the size of the communities in America as well, not just in Israel. The second largest kosher market is in America. Probably the largest Orthodox kosher market might be in America. In Israel, by default, it's going to be the largest kosher market because the Rabbanut Harashit requires everything being imported to be kosher certified unless it's going to be labeled as not kosher, and then it can only be sold in stores that label themselves as not kosher. So what's happened over the years is that in Europe, Kashrus didn't develop quite the same way. And I'm not being motzi las chas v'sholom in any particular European hashkachos. Some of them are very, very machmir and very, very good. But you have around the world in different places outside of America and Eretz Yisrael, where you have hashkachos that will rely on many backhanded heterim, if you will. Things that, much more questionable and much more b'di'evad, not in the post facto sense, but in the sense of by necessity, they're going to be lenient on certain things, and they certify certain flavorings as kosher LePesach abroad. So Ashkacha doesn't know as well, might accept products from some of these other Ashkachos, but it's like a magic wand. In other words, there isn't anything different about those flavorings. They're just going to use, again, the same issue that we have with making them kosher Pesach because they're so complex and they have so many flavors, is what they're going to use to allow it. That there's something called zegorim, that there's two different elements that are giving the same taste, and to the regular palate, you're not going to be able to differentiate when I taste the sweetness. Am I tasting the honey? Am I tasting the sugar? Am I tasting the stevia? Am I tasting the aspartame? What am I tasting in the product? You're not going to be able to taste it. So they say, okay, therefore, whatever is a problematic is going to be batal. In a flavoring, it's more complicated to say such a thing because everything is there for a very definitive purpose. And when you take it out, that's why it tastes like Pesach, when you take out some of those elements. So it's very hard to rely on this. And that's going to be one of the big differences in products that you see on the shelf here in Eretz Yisrael between the first tier hashkachos, if you will, and the other ones that just aren't quite there. To move on from products and describing the difference, that's why it's prudent to be stringent, and you say, okay, it's probably just Pesach. The Eida Charedis has their minhagim as their chumras, and in America I eat OU, so I can eat all these different things that have fancy Yiddish oisius on it. I think Rabbi Wine used to say, don't confuse Jews with Judaism. So don't confuse Yiddish Isis with Yiddishkeit, and don't confuse halachic claims with halacha, with halachic adherence. Anyway, it's important, it's prudent, one should be very careful with the products that they buy in Pesach. They should have a good, reliable certification. Now, some of the things which the Rav mentioned to me are confusing here in Eretz Yisrael in particular. It goes back to the kitnios. While we do certify kitnios, first of all, it's extremely clear. It's OU kitniot. We made a separate symbol. It's like a little rectangle that has the kitniot coming out of the OU. Similarly, some of the other major American hashgachas that started certifying kitnios. That's a story of its own right, why we did that. But we made sure to make it very, very clear. In Eretz Yisrael, there's far more products because at least half the kosher market, if not more, a little bit more than half the population here, I think, is actually Sephardi. Not all Sephardim eat kitnios, right? When the Rush came to Morocco, so he introduced the minhagim of kitnios to some of the kehillos in Morocco, and therefore some of the kehillos, at least some of the kitnios products, they don't use on Pesach. But by and large, there's a lot of Sephardim here, even very, very religious Sephardim. And then there's also the masses that might be just traditional, and for them, anything that says Kashrus Pesach on any level will be sufficient. Therefore, there's a tremendous kitnios market here in Eretz Yisrael, which also lends to other areas of, so to speak, confusion in this whole world of kitnios. That's, the Rav made a comment when he was reading down the kitnios list from the OU on rapeseed. So that's one of the areas where in America it's a much less developed area, because if the OU views rapeseed as kitnios, so that's it, it's kitnios, it's not used in any product, pretty much, except for the few kitnios products that are certified as kitniot, which mostly are more simple products for the most part. And it's less existent. But over here, all of a sudden, it opens up this new area because there's a lot of people who are less particular about things, and as long as there's a Rav, sometimes a reliable, sometimes a less reliable one who's going to say that it's fine, so they'll assume it to be fine as well. So the rapeseed, nobody's eating rapeseeds as rapeseeds here. The truth is, it's what we call canola oil. For the most part, canola oil is rapeseed, not to be confused with grapeseed. Okay, rapeseed oil is canola oil. It was originally used as a crude oil, and that's for the most part because the rapeseed, if you see it growing on the side of the road, it looks exactly like a mustard seed. Exactly. It's, again, if you're a real botanist, maybe you'll be able to you'll be able to decipher, because you can decipher all the different species of all the different types of mustards from another. So you'll be able to decipher this is rapeseed and not regular mustard. But if you see it growing on the side of the road, it will look the same, like a wild mustard. And it's part of the same genus, it's the same family, it's really the same type of thing as a mustard. However, it's not something which is usually used in food production because it has an extremely, extremely, extremely bitter taste. Now, when it comes to the whole sugya of kitnios, this is going back to more the Ramah and the Rishonim. There were various reasons why they made the enactment of kitnios, one of which is that it can be confused with grains because you can use it the same way as grains, and the other one is because it was stored together with grains. But there was a specific list that's listed that the Ramah brings, like chardal, like mustard seeds, and various other items. I think lentils is mentioned there, and some of the beans are mentioned there, and rice is mentioned there. So that list is very clear cut. That's kitnios. The question is what about all sorts of, what they call New World food? At least once upon a time, they called it New World food when they came to the Americas, right? And the Treif in America had all sorts of new food that people weren't used to eating in Europe. And even if they ate it in Europe, it was because once there was enough import-export, it came across the waters back to Europe. But at the time of the enactment, it definitely didn't exist. Like things like peanuts and corn that aren't listed in these lists, and they're things which are very often accepted as kitnios by many. And it's not on the list. So there's a responsa from Rav Moshe Feinstein where he feels that anything that wasn't part of the original Gzera, we don't apply the Gzera to. There's various proofs to that. For brevity's sake, we won't get into all of that. But that's the basic yesod of Rav Moshe Feinstein. In Rav Moshe's home, I wasn't zeichet, I don't, at least I don't remember that being zeichet to see it in Rav Moshe's home, but his children's home, I definitely saw it. They eat peanuts on Pesach. If you come to visit them at Chol Mayit, they'll announce Reuven, but they might offer you to eat peanuts. So most people don't eat peanuts because it's viewed as kitnios, including the OU. We don't certify peanuts as not being kitnios. Now, corn is a little bit more complicated, and this goes back to the question also of things like quinoa, which some people say, in America, people are eating quinoa now, the OU certifies it as quinoa, which is true. I'm going to get to that briefly. But it's something which definitely has all the tanoim, all the conditions of kitnios, all the reasons why it should be kitnios. Nonetheless, it might not have been included in kitnios because if we stay strictly to that definition of the original list, v'zeuza, so it's not in the list. So there's a little bit of contention around exactly what Rav Moshe meant also in that. And products that fit the bill perfectly for kitnios have been generally accepted as kitnios. Products that don't fit the bill perfectly is where there's more contention. Right? So they tend to be more machmir. Some of that might be, again, when there's a kitnios option, it's very easy to say, okay, it's good for people who eat kitnios and people who don't. Most of the people who don't, a lot of them don't want to eat anything that their parents didn't eat anyway. New food, not new food, they'll stay away from it because they don't have a Masorah that it's mutter. And Pesach, we all go back to Masorah, we all go back to what they did, in our parents' home, etc. And people become very careful. Although I remember, after I first got married, my wife comes from a home where they eat close to nothing on Pesach. And when she came to my parents' house, so we eat anything that's certified by a good hashgacha. So she was telling us to one of her uncles and aunts, that it's very different. We went to visit one of her uncles and aunts when we were by and that Pesach, the first Pesach, she was by my parents. And she was telling me it's very different. They eat all sorts of products. And my wife's answer is like, what do you mean? What kind of products? And my wife says, like ketchup. And I'm looking at the counter and she goes, ketchup's not a product. That's like an ingredient. So I learned, different people have different ways to handle their Masorah. Nonetheless, that's in Eretz Yisrael, they generally are more strict. Some of it also comes from, sometimes some of these small shkachos have less knowledge of how these things are made. They don't grow in Israel. They never saw it. And so maybe it's kitnios. So that's sometimes a reason for discrepancy. Back to the rapeseed. So the rapeseed, because it's part of the mustard family, it looks like mustard. Rabbi Belsky felt very strongly that it is mustard, and that's why the OU views canola oil as kitnios. When things say on it, lochle liftit, or lochle litzitin, okay, so very often, now lecithin is confusing because that might not be just liftit. It might be soy. And that would be more complicated because less people are comfortable with that. When it comes to canola, regular straight up liftit, that will be a canola product. And therefore, there are people who are more makel about it. But again, there's more of a market, so you see that more here than other places. Because companies are always going to try to promote it as far as they can, and they say, okay, there are other abanim, there are some chashuver abanim that say that canola products are fine, again because it was really a crude oil, etc. There might be other tzirufim to it, and going back to the fact this is not the Isser D'Oraisa on Pesach, that will be more lenient in these types of areas, and that's the reason why you have things labeled like that. That's what the label means. I think the Rav wanted to take questions and answers now, so we'll move on to that.
I'm very nervous because we have 10 minutes and a lot of questions. Let's hear maybe just hear you. I want to say something very controversial first of all. Before we get to the thing. I was makabel from my Rebbe, Rav Scheinberg, that we eat canola oil on Pesach. By the way, it's only been around in the market for since the 70s or something, so it was like a new thing. when I was in yeshiva. But we do eat it, and exactly as Krakowski explained, it's not on the original list. They didn't have it. It was not on the original list. Now, the only thing with that is that you have to make sure that it's kosher to Pesach. You can have just because it's canola oil, it doesn't mean that you're allowed to eat it. That's not a hechsher. That's not a hechsher either. It works. So you have to make sure, like when you go to buy canola oil, if you're going to use it. If you don't use it, don't use it. I was makabel for my Rebbe that you could use it, but make sure it has a good hashkafa, as Rabbi Krakowski so professionally said, a first tier hashkafa. I don't know if you're going to explain that or not. It's very difficult because nobody wants to talk about exactly what you can eat and what you can't eat, and it's very complicated for us. So I understand, but maybe we can make a list of 50 and say, yes, these are good, some 10 of these are bad or something like that. I don't know how you do it, but I know it's a problem. The first year hashkachas, I think we do know which are the first year hashkachas. No, in other words, you have an eitzah here. Just sticking to, BOU, the Badatzei de Charedis. Actually, I made a list. Tell me if you agree with this list. Badatzei de Charedis, Landau, Rav Mahpud, Reuben, Vad Mahadrin, Snuva. Mahadrin is a key word here. I don't know that it's a complete, once it's Mahadrin, it's automatically good, but if it's not Mahadrin, then you have a problem. Rabbanut Binyamin Mahadrin, Rabbanut Nachal Sorek Mahadrin, Rabbanut Svat Mahadrin, Rabbanut Shomron Mahadrin. That's the list, the easy list I made. You can get a lot of food out of these things. Like maybe we don't have to keep on asking, but I think Sephardi hashkachas, we love them, but they're not for us because they eat kidneys and we don't eat kidneys. So right away we're talking about a very natural divide between the foods and just, you can call me and ask me about this hashkach. I don't necessarily know, but what I do know is that these are the good ones. So try to stick to the good ones. I think that's a good answer. You agree? Yeah. If it's a mahadrin hashkacha and it says without kidneys, so they need it. It's as simple as that.
What about the I don't know how to pronounce it.
Lecithin.
Is that? Do you think that's okay?
Lecithin could is more problematic because it could come from.
What he said was you don't know what's in that lecithin. The lecithin itself could be a problem.
Processed.
But liftit
is really canola.
Canola oil, yeah. Canola rapeseed was not on the rapeseed is not on the list as well, the original list, and therefore Ramosha and a lot of the poskim in America said that it's okay. I'm gonna move fast now through 3 minutes of yes. We don't eat things with lecithin unless it has a mahadrin hashkacha. It means they checked into the lecithin, right? Lo'ochle liftit is that, am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah.
That's something different. That's not lecithin. Ochle liftit is canola oil. Basically, it has canola oil in it. That's what they call liftit.
Again, it's a good hashkacha.
So again, you have to make sure it's a mahadrin hashkacha. Ochle liftit.
I don't think it's clear.
Okay, the word liftit. I don't actually.
I know, but you do it in ice cream. It says locally with teeth or something. So is that a yes
So
or
first
no?
of all,
You would trust the hashkacha.
Yes. No,
yeah. So if it's OU, locally liftit.
We don't write that.
Okay, if it's madatz locally liftit. What?
I don't know that there are so many that you can rely on that writing.
On the back of the
You're saying a very interesting thing. So no, we have to be. No, but listen. You have to be cluey here because the very fact that they write it, they might not necessarily be one of the first year hashkachas. So and the chomer of Pesach is that we only eat from the first year hashkachas. I think what's a chiddush to me this year is for myself. Look, I want to tell you something. Let's just dedicate our cleaning for Pesach and what we give up on Pesach to like all the tzaras and glories right now. They're looking for hostages. We're looking for chametz. It's kedai, I think. Not that I'm saying this is causing that, who knows. But what I am saying is it's a schus. It's a schus, and it's not that big of a Mesiras Nefesh, I don't think, to not be so mufalpil and just to use the first tier hashkachas. And we know what the first tier hashkachas are. And if it's a hashkacha that we use, and that's all. Let me go. Can I go? I just want to. Yeah.
What is first tier hashkacha?
What does it mean?
Yeah.
So first of all, I think Rabbi Krakowski was the first tier hashkacha.
The way I would define a first tier hashkacha means a kashrus that has both strong halachic knowledge and strong professional knowledge. If they're lacking in one of those two areas, especially if they don't realize that they're lacking in one of those two areas, so then it's then they can't really be such a lechatchila hashkacha. So usually the bigger and more respected hashkachos have an infrastructure that contains both professionals that understand very well, very often the very same people who are both professionals and poskim, with tremendous halachic knowledge, and at the very least have people who have both types of people, and between the two will be able to come out with the right halachic decisions on everything. At least almost all the time. Rabbi Belsky Zechron of Rocha used to say the difference between a good hashkacha and a not good hashkacha is an hashkacha that never makes a mistake. It's what they do when they make a mistake. So, that's ultimately what's really important, is that there should be both elements there. After Rabbi Belsky was nifter, some of the poskim we asked the shaylos to don't have the same, 35, 40 years experience in kashrus that Rabbi Belsky had when we were asking shaylos, and we sometimes give them background. But they're very, very careful to go through all the background and to ask lots of questions about about how it's done and why it's done and what ingredients and what each ingredient does and why it does. And until there's all that back and forth and everything's worked out well, and it goes back and forth between the various poskim, there's a process, and the decisions are made in a very, very, very educated manner.
I just want to add something to this, if I may. And, I'm not a maven in first tier hashkachas, but I do want to say two things. First of all, on the KSY website, there's a list right there. It's very easy to find. There's a list of what we consider to be first tier hashkachas, and I highly recommend that you stick to that list. I want to point. It's under resources and website. That's right. I want to point out something. I don't know if Rabbi Krakowski agrees with me or not. But you see, like, if you go around from place to place and you meet Rabbanim, which I do here and there, these are not bad people. A lot of them are big Talmidei Chachamim, and they're good people. And I would even, and their kavanah is very l'shem shemayim. And it's not even that they're not knowledgeable, but what needs to be understood is that the Rabbanut, let's say, and I really when I realized this a number of years ago, it really changed my whole thinking about it. It's not like the Rabbanut's goal is to make as many things kosher for as many people as possible, so that people will not be eating treif. That's the whole year round, and they do that goal. So they'll use a lot of different leniencies and chaps and shuvas just to say that it's kosher, and that's Hashem Shabbat. But that's not for us. It's not for us, and that's why the Rabbanut themselves has usually a Rabbanut Mahadran level. That's more for us. So I think just to cut through all the different confusion, what I'm asking people to do, and I'm going to do myself, is just stick to the good hashkachas, and especially on Pesach, the Chumrah of Pesach, without having to do. Now you see, you're not finding the chili sauce that you usually use. Okay. So, as the guy said, can't live without Pepsi for a week. I'm not giving anybody musar. I'm just saying that we're at a time that we need to have like some extra chusim anyways, and some extra Yerushalayim. So stick to the good hashkachas. I don't even know where to begin and end with this, but I do want to say, kashering ovens, it's in my interest to talk about it, because otherwise nobody knows what to do, and you get frustrated with me. So let me just say a couple of things that I'm going to say quickly, because most of you know this. A self-cleaning oven is a self-koshering oven. If it's really a self-cleaning oven, it koshers itself, and it koshers whatever you put in it. It also probably destroys most of the things that you put in it. The definition of and I even wrote down the temperature, the definition of what's not called self-cleaning, but a pyrolytic oven is that it gets up to 930 degrees. That's almost 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. If you think about it, like your oven goes up to Fahrenheit 400 degrees or something like that. We're talking about 1,000 degrees. And that's a self-cleaning oven. It destroys what?
What's Celsius?
Celsius is 500. So what's important to understand is this, and I want to just say this. So there's a lot of ways to kasher, but to self-clean, which is very similar to using a blowtorch, is a libun gomer. You are destroying any kind of food value that could be possibly be there. It's not the only way to kosher something, but it's a darn good way to kosher things because you're actually destroying the value. You self-clean your oven and you go in when it's let it cool off, and then you go with a napkin and it's ash. There's nothing there, with the exception, I think, is around the rim there. You got to clean that because the rubber around it, right? The self-cleaning part doesn't always get to that. And the what? Well, the inside glass does. I mean, it's in the oven. It doesn't have to be crystal clear. We have to know that we killed the food value. So that's a self-clean oven. There are a lot of self-clean ovens that are not really self-clean ovens, especially here in Israel. And we just investigated this. They have like a steaming system or some kind of other systems, but it doesn't do this thing of getting to 500 degrees Celsius and killing the food value and the chametz value. So you have to make sure that you've got a self-cleaning. Otherwise, you can just kasher it like normal people do. It's not a self-cleaning oven. I mean, you don't have to kill everything. And what that's called, the language we're going to use is libun kal. Like you kill it, that's libun gomer. You don't kill it, rather extract it. So the way you extract it, everybody knows, is kibolo, kach, kolto. The same way it went in, this is the way it has to get out. So if you use your oven, what's the Celsius? The Celsius highest thing in the oven? 250, which is like 500, right? So like 250. If you use your oven for chametz at 250 degrees, then the way to kasher it is at 250. I'm talking about Celsius. I'm sorry, degrees. So what that means is you have to. But in this case, you're not killing anything. So what you have to do is actually clean the oven. Pain in the neck. You have to clean the oven and make sure there's nothing there that you can like if you rub your hand along it when it's cold. When you rub your hand along it, you won't feel anything. It's clean. That's what clean means. You don't feel it with your eyes closed. Not what you see. It's what you feel. Then what you do is, I'm just going to say very simply, if you have individual questions, just call me. But then what you do is you have to clean your oven. You wait 24 hours. Always wait 24 hours. You clean your oven very, very well. If you use something like St. Moritz or something like that, it's even better because then you really are killing the chametz, possibly yourself also. So you have to be careful with that stuff. So the stuff is like very toxic stuff, or easy off. It's very toxic. So, but you clean it out. You wait 24 hours. You clean it out, or you clean it out and wait 24 hours. I don't think that makes a difference one way or the other. Then here's what we do. LP or Moshe Feinstein is we take you could take a tin can or something with water. You boil the water up on your stove or take it out of your thing. Put it in the oven. Turn on the oven for as long as you would normally use it. What is that? An hour and a half? Let's say. So let's say.
Could be as long as 4 hours.
On the high of 250 degrees now. No. Okay, so then do it for 4 hours. B'vakasha. Whatever kibolo kachpolta, what it took to get the chametz in, that's what it takes to get it out. And then your oven is kosher. As simple as that. The glass. I just want to make it simple. If you have a stovetop, Simple way to kasher, let's say you have a good old stovetop, 4 burners, gas, fire, everything coming out. So those, there's a way to kasher the whole top. And the way you kasher the top is by, meaning the whole stovetop. The way you do it is you take a piece of blech or very thick aluminum foil, you put it over the top, and you turn on all 4 burners for, let's say, 5-10 minutes. You can't do it for much longer. It gets dangerous. It gets very, very hot under there. But anything that's under it is kosher.
The knobs will not cover the knobs.
Thank you about the knobs. Don't cover the knobs. Because if you cover the knobs, you will not have any knobs.
Just clarify, you're saying that the hubs, this is just if it's an electric stove?
I'm not talking about electric. I'm talking about gas.
Yes.
Now, electric, I'm going to talk about electric right now.
Don't you have to remove the...
No, because you don't have to clean it. No. When you put a piece of metal, let me make it clear. When you put a piece of blech, aluminum, on top of your 4 burners and you turn on all 4 burners, that's the same as a self-cleaning oven. So you don't have to, I'm making clear, I don't want to get into a billboard about it. It's the same as a self-cleaning oven under there. If you'll put a spoon under there, that spoon will become kosher. You're bringing it up to something like 1100 degrees by putting this blech over it. You cannot do this, just bear with me for a minute, you cannot do this with an old-time electric burners, meaning long old-time, like, I don't mean old time where you actually saw the element, but I'm talking about these days, they're a glass top. It's not really glass, it's ceramic. And first of all, I don't know if you can kasher ceramic altogether, but if you put this top on top of it as I'm describing, you will break it. So you can't do that. You can't do that. Just hold the question for a second. Let me explain, because otherwise, so this is not an answer. I don't know if there is an answer with the glass top, typical electric elements. I don't think that there is an answer. Now, somebody brought here. You see this thing here? I want to show you this. This is, take it to the camera. This is a cover that's sold that you could put on top of an electric 4 burners. You can see exactly where the 4 burners are, right? So that's what this is. This is a company called Lomi, which I understand went out of business this year, and it's a little bit thicker. But these things are all over Amazon. On every single one of them, it says, "Don't use it when the fire's on." When the electric, when it's hot. Now, I don't know what they did here. Now they stopped selling it, I think, because it's unsafe. So I don't know if there is. They all say don't use it if it's over 1,000 degrees. Your typical flame is 1,200, 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit, 500, 550. So it's not safe. I don't know. It's not safe. So if anybody asks me, don't buy an typical electric glass top ceramic stove. Just don't buy them. They're pretty, but don't buy them because there's no way to kosher for Pesach. Or get something else like a plata or something to use for cooking on Pesach. But you can't. This is your only answer. If you have what's more popular these days, which is an induction stove. Now that's really cool. What happens over here is that under the glass, there's something like magnetism. It's not magnetic. And when you put a pot on it, the connection between the pot and the element there makes the pot hot. That doesn't even get hot. And there you can cover it because it doesn't get so hot. That's only the hot heat of the pot. So there, what I would recommend is they sell special silicone mats, especially to go over induction ovens. That means you can put the pot right on top of it and it'll cook anyways, and it's 100% kosher Pesach just by covering it up. So those are the 3 kinds of stovetops and 2 kinds of ovens. Last thing is the microwave. Microwave is very easy to kasher because, first of all, it's very easy to clean. They're easy to clean because they don't get so dirty, because it does, like an oven is defined in Halacha, is something that the walls get hot, a tanur. The walls get hot and then cook the food. That's not how microwave works. Microwave works by heating up by messing around with the molecules and stuff and making it get hot. So what happens is the walls, depending on your microwave, sometimes it gets hot, sometimes you could cook something completely and put your hand right on the wall of the microwave. So how treif does it become? So we're just machmer with that. So what you do is, this is what I do in my house. We clean it out. I can't say I clean it out. It gets cleaned out. And then the glass part of it, like we have it's like a glass looking tray. Yeah, the turntable. So we cover that with saran wrap, which is good. The microwave doesn't mind it. You just cover it around. And then what you do is take a cup of boiling water, again, according to the Pesach or Moshe Feinstein, take a cup of boiling water, put it into the microwave, turn the microwave on for 5-6 minutes. It kind of fills up with steam, and your microwave is kosher. If you do this, first don't use it for 24 hours. So you said, I just koshered your whole kitchen for you. Just the countertops. If you have a natural countertop like granite, and you know what it is, because everything now it looks like it is and it's not. But if you have a real stone, not Caesar stone, that's like a composite, not
Caesar stone.
no, what's it called?
Formica?
No, it's the new quartz. Yeah. That's all different. I mean, that needs a psak halacha. You have to figure out what to do with that. Formica is plastic, but if you have a real stone countertop, like you splurged and you really got like real granite or real stone, real marble or something like that. So then all you need to do is pour boiling hot water on it everywhere, and it's kosher. You don't have to cover it or anything. But not that many people have that kind of a countertop. So the right thing to do is to cover it. You can clean it and cover it, and you're good. Just going through the questions in my mind because I read them before. Let's say the faucets. Is that what you're going to ask me?
No.
One second, because I go with faucets before I lose my thought. I'm terrible. After 10 o'clock, I'm done. By the way, if anybody has to go, and I want you to be able to ask about hashkachas to Rabbi Krakowski. I just want to get through your kitchen. When it comes to the faucets, it's very simple. You take nobody boils their faucet in hot water, so it's again the principle of Kabbalah Kachpolto says that take some boiling hot water from your kumkum and pour it over the faucet and over the whole stainless steel sink. Make sure you get every inch. Not you pour it here and it goes there, but it takes maybe 2-3 kumkums of water to be able to kosher your. Do you think I'm being too bachman? No? Okay.
I think there's such a thing.
What?
I think there's such a thing as being rachmir about Pesach.
Okay, good. And you just pour on the faucet and on the stainless steel, and the same thing you're going to do with your granite counter. Now people say, well, what about the spout inside? Maybe that became chametz, and it probably did, because if you made, let's say, a macaroni on the stovetop, and then you put it in your sink, and you pour it out, or the smoke is going up, you probably did make that little spout chametz stick. It's probably true. So it's not like a big chumrah. So the answer is very simple. You take water from the kumkum, and you do the same thing back. This is how you became chametz. This is how you're going to become kosher. And you take a cup of water and just go like that, and you've koshered the bottom of your faucet that way. Very simple. Technically, you can do it with.
Sometimes they have rubber around it.
You could kosher rubber. Kosher rubber. If you could unscrew it and clean it off, that's the right thing to do. But that's how you kosher. What? Stainless steel sink. That's what I'm talking about.
Without use.
You have to wait 24 hours prior.
You wait 24 hours if you use anything you used for hot. You wait 24 hours. I'll tell you the reason. The reason for 24 hours is not like a magical number. Right, because you want it to be a not ben yomo. That's all. You want it to be a not ben yomo. So we don't kosher things. We don't kosher things that are ben yomo.
Cold water goes on it in that 24 hours. That's fine, right?
Yeah. You can't use it for hot. Also, give me the list. My list here for a second. I want to just make sure I'm covered. If somebody has to go, so go. I think we could stay for another couple of minutes.
I do have questions for the
Maybe it has something about the faucet
You don't need it. You don't need it. Why do you need it?
It's worse than anything.
He wants to tell you about the faucet.
The
There's
cloth,
nothing.
the cloth probably would make it worse. What it would do is it might catch chametz that was with the water somehow, and that probably would have been mutter. And now it catches it, it separates it, and now it gets back in. If anything, you're better off the less filtering, the better.
Okay. Rabbi Krakowski, 1 second. Tuna fish. I like this question. There's dugim tuna fish next to each other on the shelf. Some of them have OUP. Some of them don't have OUP. They have a regular OU, but they do have a CRC, which is not the CRC, but it's the Hisachtus Harabanim of something or another, which I think
Conglomerate Medical Council.
right. It's a Hasidic thing, yeah, Samer. So, but it's not on the OU recommended list for Pesach.
It doesn't have a kosher Pesach.
If it wants, some do have an OUP, some don't. Can you use here in the store? They have just OU without OUP, but it has these Hisachtus
Is
Harabanim.
kosher Pesach.
That's the question.
This
Yeah, they say
Actus
kosher
does
Pesach.
say kosher Pesach.
Yeah.
Okay, so in general, OU policy, and I didn't hear anything to the contrary about this product. If it says kosher Pesach somewhere on the product, and it doesn't say next to the OU that it excludes Pesach certification.
Oh, good.
If it says, if it says next to the OU for year-round use only, or if it says, Passover not included, or local El Pesach, if it's a Hebrew label, or something like that, so then maybe not. Now, if something looks like maybe it's not genuine or whatever it is, it's always worthwhile asking. Meaning, if they put on a hashkacha, which most people would probably assume is a lesser good hashkacha than the OU, less well known and less good, then it's definitely worthwhile asking, because then it's likely that somebody took something that had an OU and they stamped their hashkacha on it for Pesach because they know the OU doesn't view it as kosher Pesach, but they're going to be super lenient and decide that it is kosher Pesach, and then it's worthwhile asking.
Did you catch that great yesod that he said? I just meaning what? Let me just say to my words so I understand it. If it doesn't say, if it says OU and somewhere on there it says kosher Pesach by some other hashkacha, but the OU doesn't say chutz from Pesach, so then generally speaking it's good. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
That's what you said. Right.
Unless I'm just going to clarify the unless. The unless is an imported product that has an Israeli hashkacha added to it, or some sort of other European hashkacha or something like that for Pesach. If that was added, it's very often added by the importer, not added by us, and then it should be assumed that the OU doesn't certify. If it's the original label with hashkacha that is likely to dual certify something with us, like this Achdus, any or other American Haimish hashkachos, then if it says kosher Pesach, someone's on it, it's kosher Pesach according to the OU also.
So dugim tuna fish with an OU and a hisachtus for Pesach is kosher Pesach, even though it doesn't say OUP. So, right?
That's the case. I didn't see them.
Tell me. Oh yeah, I keep hearing about it.
I work with vets, and we were explained by the suppliers that a lot of the time that they can't take off the non-Pesach picture and just put the Pesach picture on because it costs too much money to do that. So what they'll do is that it might have something that says Pesach all year round Pesach, but it will have the kosher Pesach elsewhere on the product brand. So it is kosher Pesach, it just they didn't want to waste the money by removing the old picture.
Okay, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, so this is another source of confusion in Israel. In America, in general, a product that's kosher Pesach, the ingredient panel will match the fact that it's kosher Pesach. It won't say, flour and gluten and all sorts of things like that in the back ingredients, but say in the front, kosher Pesach. That won't usually happen because there's a lot of liability in that. In Israel, there's a lot of understanding. This is for 1 week, and everything needs to become kosher Pesach for a week. And we're not going to waste money on printing labels that actually say what's in there, etc. And we'll just slam on some sort of other sticker, or we'll inkjet on kosher Pesach. So, if a person has to be careful with what it says next to the hashkacha and what it says in the inkjet. If the inkjet explicitly says kosher Pesach Rabbanut Bilvad, and next to the Bedat Eida Charedis, or maybe even the OU, it says Li'imot Shana Bilvad, or it doesn't even say anything, but it just said in the inkjet Rabbanut Bilvad, so it means that the Bedatz or the OU doesn't certify that product for Pesach. If it doesn't say anything next to the Bedatz, one way or the other, and then it's somewhere's inkjetted on it, Kasher LaPesach, so then it's fine. The areas that are a little bit more gray is sometimes you have a label that says Local El Pesach by the Bedatz, and then on top it says Kasher LaPesach, okay, inkjetted in, and it doesn't say Rabbanut Bilvad. Very often that was an oversight, and they used, so to speak, the wrong symbol. They shouldn't have used the symbol that says Local El Pesach, and they did. And nonetheless, the Bedatz is certifying it for Pesach. I'm not going to take responsibility for any other Bedatz. And we do make them inkjet, Kasher LaPesach, OU. Make them add the OU also to the inkjet, if that's would be the scenario. And again, that would only be something for the local market. Anything that travels to America will require a new label. Again, accidents happen and the stories and things like that, but in general, that is the matter of policy.
There's quite a lot of products that says Local El Pesach, Limot Shana from Badat Seidah Haredis, but then it'll have Chuk Chatam Sofer says, yes, it's great for Pesach. So.
Again, if it's if the hashkacha that certifies it for Pesach is a good hashkacha that you would rely on, so then that's fine. They're taking responsibility for Pesach. If it's hashkacha that its whole business is only to certify things that good hashkachos wouldn't certify for Pesach, then you should probably stay away from it.
I'm gonna take Rabbi off the hook here, and I want to say that the Fuchasam Sofer, Petach Tikva is not on our first tier hashkacha. It's not on the first tier hashkacha list. So the B'nai Brak, I'm not as familiar. I think it's a little better. Is it?
It's a little better.
It's about the same thing. It's also not. It's not also not on our list this year. So my recommendation is for us Machmir L'man Hashem is I don't think for Pesach this year you should use Chuk Chasam Sofer. I don't know that it's bad, but there's been problems. And now there's somebody who has like a whole bunch of chickens and stuff that they bought. Chuk Chasam Sofer, so call me and we'll paskin it out. It's like it's treif, but I think you should stay away from it. Here's an example. One of the questions is Oppenheimer chocolate chips, which I only see on Pesach, like marshmallows. They come with either an Eida Charedis or with a Chasam Sofer B'nai Brak. Are both okay?
That'll answer. And then I'm okay.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, it happens to be a company that we certify their export, and I'm familiar with it a little bit. Now, there's a little bit of a question in terms of kashering chocolate. Part of the apparatus used, the conch, in the chocolate making process is very, very sensitive, and therefore you can't really put water into it. So there's, it's a matter of contention whether cocoa butter, when it's heated up, it's a liquid, whether that's considered a liquid in order to kasher or not. Moshe Feinstein held it isn't. The Minchas Yitzchak maintained that it was. Therefore, the Eida Charedis does kasher with it. The Eida Charedis takes responsibility for kashering Oppenheimer, and they make the first runs of chocolate there. All the ingredients there are the same. That happens to be a little bit of a unique exception. It's always, I would still tell you, the better the hashkacha, the more sure everything is, etc. I would still say that. But nonetheless, it's probably, it's coming out of Oppenheimer. The products are probably fine, notwithstanding. There is that leniency in terms of how they kasher. We only take after the Eida Charedis produced, because Rabbi Belsky Zichrono Livracha didn't like kashering like that, because Rabbi Moshe felt it wasn't a good way to kasher. But the only thing you're kashering for in the chocolate process is kitnios, which is a question in its own right, if one needs to kasher from kitnios or not. Rabbi Belsky Zichrono Livracha, as did Rav Elyashiv Zichrono Livracha, felt fervently that one needs to kasher from kitnios. However, he said that once a number of runs were done afterwards, and there's no chash that anything's really left over, and any belios would have been absorbed into something else, etc. He felt that it was fine, and therefore the OU's productions, what comes to America with the OU at least, is done after the Eid HaCharedis is productions, and that's the story there. But in terms of the Chassam Sofer, it should be there, similar to the Eid HaCharedis. Again, if you have Eid HaCharedis as an option, Hinei Matov, but if not, it's probably fine.
Good. Okay, I'm going to take one last question because it's late. Anybody who just think for a second? Everybody who wants rice cakes? Rice is kidneys.
The B&D one.
Oh, you want to hear my B&D thing?
Yeah, you scared people. Scared my neighbors.
My little B&T, yeah. So there's a company, and I think this is current today. Here's the interesting question. I'll just leave you with this thought. In order, I said at the beginning, so we'll end with where we close. We'll end with where we start. Wheat is not chametz. Wheat that came in contact with water is chametz. Rice is kidneys, but what if that rice never came in contact with water? What if it was watched from the time that it was, whatever you do with rice, harvested, and it never came, while it's growing in the ground, it's allowed to come in contact with water because then Hashem takes care of it. But the question is, once you pick it, it absorbs water. So what about like rice that never came in contact with water? So the answer is you're not going to find it. How are you going to find such a thing? Rice that never came in contact with water. The Sephardim don't mind of eating rice, and the Ashkenazim don't eat rice. It doesn't come up. So comes the Rav Shulchan Aruch, high authority, and he said that you can't say that kidneys is more machmir than chametz itself. Which means to say that if somebody would watch this rice from the time it gets picked, you pick rice, what do you do with rice? Whatever. But for the time that you take the rice off the, detach it, if there's a rabbi watching to make sure that it's never gotten wet, and then you went ahead and made rice cakes out of it, so it can't be worse than a matzah, because it never came in touch with it, and came with this company, B&D, which is, I happen to know one of the people from when I was a kid. Bosch is the B part of it. And from people, good people, good people. And they made a non-kidneous or non-Isser kidneous rice cake. And we checked this 3-4 years ago. It's a good chiddush. I just love it from a Lumdische point of view. And it's a lot of people need rice cakes. And I checked it last year, 2 years ago. And Bela checked it this year, yes or no? Sleeping. Okay. What?
It can't be the same texture that it's all year long.
It has to say good for Pesach.
It says on it, but it's also kosher Pesach. And that's around the from Elon was checked it over.
Yeah. So I think it's fun to eat kosher rice cakes on Pesach. So if you find these and it says on it that it's Mala Atumim kosher Pesach, I think you could eat it. It's a question of kidneys and the Rav Shulchan Aruch. So I think that's fine.
Why not eat air popcorn?
Yeah, exactly. Why is it only rice?
They don't make it. I mean, because it gets wet.
What if I took corn, right?
Go for it. And watch it from the time it's picked. You have to watch it from the time it's picked. Make sure it never gets wet. And
Rice comes out of water. How could it not be?
when it's attached. But once it's detached, it can't get wet. So you could do it with corn. By the way, corn is also like a new type of a thing. We didn't eat corn 1,000 years ago. But I want to tell you that probably one of the main ingredients in all good tasting things is high fructose corn syrup. So it's all kidneys. Almost everything is kidney.
Cotton oil? Cotton syrup?
Okay, so that's the last question, cotton oil. What do you want to say about cotton oil?
Okay, cottonseed oil is actually a pretty simple question. Cottonseed, it's very, very difficult to say that it should be kidneys. It's not part of the list, and it's not a food. Cottonseeds aren't eaten. And at some point in time, they made, again, a crude oil out of cottonseed.
Either are rapeseeds.
Refined. But rapeseed, the only reason Rabbi Belsky felt that it was kidneys is because it's a part of the mustard family and looks like mustard.
Mustard.
Right, so he felt that it's considered the original mustard. Whereas the cottonseed, it's very, very, very difficult to say that at all because it was never used as a food item until they made cottonseed oil. And edible cottonseed oil. Now, the truth is, the source for asking, I'm not going to get into all the truths that talk about it, and maybe they didn't completely understand what it was. The real reason why there was a movement at one point in time in Israel to come out against cottonseed oil had to do with the fact that there was a very, very good hashgacha, one of the best hashgachas in Israel that was using it. And they were trying to find something against, for political reasons, they were trying to find something against this very chashuv Rav and this very good hashgacha. And they wanted to try to find the leniency that he has that others don't have. And he was using cottonseed oil. He was one who was certifying it coming into Israel. And they found some chuvas, that assered it, and they said, okay, see, he's being mater asurim, he's permitting, things that others don't, and that was, kind of to try to push him down.
So it's
So
okay.
that's the truth of it. So that's why in Israel there's very, very little cottonseed oil available in the market. Sometimes you find in some of these American types of stores. And there are products so that sometimes have it also. Some of the imported products, that was one year, the Geffen mayonnaise that had it, etc. So that was, the so to speak, the issue with it. But it had, the Sheinstein ambassador, the really very from American hashgachos on it, and of course the wonderful Hugh. And we definitely stand behind it and have no issue with it.
Okay. I don't want to, it's just not right of me to, Rabbi Krakowski has to get back to your slime. You can stay as long as you want and answer everybody's questions. And I'm tired. But.
Sorry. A very simple thing. The gum used to be, the musk gum, used to be able to get it in America with the OUP. And here in Israel, you never could. It was always listed as La'olai Kitnias Bavad. And this year, it's not, it's in Israel, again, only La'olai Kitnias Bavad. And in the States, it is not to be found at all.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say, misery loves company. So, in Lilo Yagam L'chalo. But the real reason is like this. Once upon a time, that musk gum was manufactured here in Israel. And ironically, stuff that was manufactured without any chash kitnios here in Israel was made only for America. It was a very limited amount because it was very expensive, but it was a very important product to the manufacturer for the American market. And therefore, as when I grew up, I always tell my kids the only candy we had when I grew up in America on Pesach, we had those fruit slices also. But aside from the fruit slices, there was bazooka gum. So I'm young, and that's what there was when I was a kid. And I tell them that, and now my kids they wish they could have bazooka gum on Pesach, and there's no bazooka gum, but they have, a whole slew of other things that we didn't have. So it was a very, very important market. They invested in it just in order to keep their, to be the foremost seller of such products in America. That's now, it's been outsourced. It's done outside of Israel in a company. And frankly, I would have loved to be able to certify an OU kitniot, and right now it's not something we were able to do either. So that's the ultimate story of it. Also, again, back to the fact that the hashgacha that's certifying it as kitniot needs to be a good hashgacha also. That's similar to anything that you might eat that others don't eat. You still have to make sure that the hashgacha that's certifying it is a really reliable hashgacha.
Okay. Good night, everybody. If you block the door.